I'm Dapper Dan Gavoston, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the beloved annuals, which are ongoing, I swear, and definitely count.
And I'm Mischievous Marcinacchio, and I too own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. And the annuals, well, Dan, we didn't get one in 2022. We are now in a new year, new annuals, still not counting. I think that's what they say, right? I mean, that's my New Year's resolution, is to never give it on this fight. So yeah, annuals don't count, but you're listening to a podcast and Dan's about to tell you about it.
Well, look, every year is another opportunity for another annual, and they might not always seize that opportunity, but that's their loss and my collection's loss. Regardless, everyone, welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us now in 2023 for this review episode of the Amazing Spider Talk.
Absolutely, Dan. If you want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app. Every other week, we put out a mainline episode of our flagship show, and sprinkled in between, we review new comics as well as interview some of the greatest Spider-Man creators of yesterday and today. This is the perfect time to start listening.
Yeah, and if you want to hear some of our oldest episodes, we're rapidly approaching 400 episodes of this show, and 10 years of the show is coming up soon. So if you want to go back to when Mark and I were in our early 30s and late 20s, or I guess mid 20s, and hear what was going on with us, you can listen to our Amazing Spider Talk back issues feed. It's a whole separate podcast that has every single episode that Mark and I have done over the years. We've got interviews with industry legends like Mark Bagley and JMD and Ron Friends. Some of the stuff we're going to be revisiting in the next few months. So yeah, check out Amazing Spider Talk back issues. But today on the show, Mark and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, Number 16, also known as actually 910. It's a part of the Dark Web event and officially the one after 909, which is the joke I used in the last episode, and I'm repeating here, and I feel like I wasted that opportunity. But this issue was written by Zeb Wells. The issue's cover is from artists John Romita Jr., Scott Hanna, and Marcio Menyz, and actually I think it's a pretty cool cover.
Yeah.
This issue's pencils are from Ed McGuinness with inks from Cliff Rathburn, plus colors by Marcio Menyz, and of course letters by VC's own Joe Caramagna. It's also important to note, as it was last issue, this issue is edited by Nick Lowe's evil clone, Albert Banaszak, which may clear us in on some of the issue's qualities. But this issue was first released on December 28th, 2022.
That's gold.
Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened in this particular issue of Amazing Spider-Man?
Don't threaten me with a good time, Dan. All right, here we go. We open with a flashback. Ben is kindly asking Peter to just put on the mind helmet so he can get his memories back, and Peter decides to break the helmet and kick Ben into psychoreactive goo before calling him a clone job. I mean, I was pretty traumatized by the end of Beyond, Dan, but I'm not sure that's how it went. Ben says that Peter sent him to hell before asking who's in hell now, and I believe the answer is all of us, Ben. All of us. Peter, ever the pragmatist, points out that's not how it went, and if Ben is remembering it like that, it's only because his memories were destroyed, and anyone who threatens Peter's city has a problem. And I would say the problem is we're at page 6 and we're still addressing a flashback that just reestablishes what we already know, that Ben Reilly is completely bonkers. Ben says, indeed, we have a problem, and Peter counters, not we, you. And with a dry, cool wit like that, Peter could be an action hero. They fight. Peter webs a demonic motor scooter, and I think anyone who drives one of those things in New York City has to be part demon anyway. Am I right, Dan?
I mean, those things are like ready to clip you around every corner.
I can't stand them. Anyway, Peter's been doing this longer while the scooter cries in pain and fear. Ben reveals he too has some new tricks, including weaponizing his spider sense. Apparently, the side effects of being dropped in psychoreactive goo, along with the endless need to gaslight everyone. Ben elicits a sonic axe or something, and then we cut over to the X-Men's treehouse, and I am just at a loss here.
Mark, I love that you haven't read any modern X-Men because, like, all of this must sound completely insane. Like, I'm imagining in your mind, it's like Xavier is like, look, X-Men, I have an idea. No more school for the gifted. We're investing in treehouses and chill vibes from now on. Like, honestly, like, you must be baffled by this. Like, here, let's take a side break. Tell me what you imagine is going on in the X-Men's treehouse in New York City.
I have no idea. I mean, it's just like it's like Peter, like, you know, hanging. Well, no, he's not with Kitty. I don't know because I don't follow X-Men, Dan. So what are they like playing Tiddlywinks? Are they fighting over the first issue of Radioactive Man? I'm just like throwing all these Simpsons references out there right now, guys, because that's all I got. That's all I got when it comes to this.
All right, well, take us back to the comic, Mark.
All right. Well, we're now cueing in on Madeline and Hallows Eve and Venom, okay? Who are three people who have never been in my kitchen, Alex. Venom doesn't know what they're talking about, and for once, Venom is all of us, or at least me. Hallows Eve is going to put on her face, and it's a Frankenstein monster's face, and Madeline wants to ruin the X-Men's Christmas. These are sentences I am writing right now, and you all have to listen to me recite them as you're doing right now. Comics people, right? Eve then kicks Venom to the curb, but we're going to follow him in Venom issue 14. You bet I will. I cannot wait to read more of this. Back to Peter and Ben. Peter gets Ben a new concussion for Christmas. I mean, that's a little cruel to do to someone who had a brain injury, don't you think? Ben drops a little sphere, and Peter is like, I've had enough. And Ben is all like, what are you going to do about it? Yes, this is actual dialogue. Did Zeb Wells get concussed for Christmas? Okay, so they duke it out some more, and Ben gets the upper hand because, unlike Peter, he doesn't hold back. The little orb thing provides Peter with a vision into Limbo, where he sees Jonah and Robbie getting tortured. So Ben uses Peter's outrage to trick him into saying, take me to Limbo. And since he truly meant it, in this binding agreement, a tentacle rises from the ground and carries Peter to Limbo, where we get a cliffhanger ending with a young Peter in his vintage Ditko sweater vest getting yelled at by a demonic Jonah to get back to work, Spider-Man. I need pictures of Spider-Man. No, he didn't say that. He just said get back to work. Although I don't know what a demonic Jonah would sound like. Do you think it would be quite that growly? I mean, we should have gotten Matt Little on to do that part. But anyway, I digress. And that's the issue, Dan.
Okay, well, I think to get into our overall thoughts on the issue is really to get into our thoughts of like what was promised in this issue, which is Spider-Man versus Chasm, right? It's on the like recap page. It's the thing you've been waiting for, Spider-Man versus Chasm, and I don't know how much we were waiting for this, but like, great, let's resolve this thread, and hopefully it will be worth the investment from the 15 issues of Beyond and all of that character work they did with Ben there, which maybe not the most satisfying, but like maybe they can redeem it. Like maybe there was a reason they did all of this. And I don't know, Mark, I'm going to get out of the way and just say it. Like I thought, just like the previous issue of this comic, this almost completely erases all the goodwill that I had put towards wanting the Chasm character to be interesting, maybe nuanced, show us something new about Spider-Man from a different lens. This, to me, is just dumb and maybe intentionally so. And it's wearing out all of its charity from me. And I do not like reading Chasm on the page.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's put aside what the actual, like, motivation is here, whether this is like intentionally silly or not. Like I do think we need to remove that with where I'm going with this next, which is just like, this is also just boring right now, because like I feel like so much of this issue is just retracing stuff that like not only that we already know, but it's like so established at this point. It's like, why are we going through this again? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like everything feels like it's at a dead end. It's like, you know, Ben is going to do what Ben is going to do. Peter, like, kind of half-hearted, tries to convince him otherwise, and then they just fight for a couple of pages. And, you know, we get a couple of cool things with Ben's new powers, of which we really don't understand truly what they're doing, but at least it's something different, I guess. It just feels dull and inactive for an issue that's basically all action. It feels very inactive and passive and just kind of really boring. I hate to be so derivative in the criticism here, Dan, but I don't know how else to describe it. There was nothing excited me about this issue.
Well, it's so funny because, you know, like talking about the charity of it, you know, I want to give it charity because this is such a trope presented in the most tropey way of like two people just fight it out based on a misunderstanding.
Right.
And there's no drama there. And like, I think back to the opening arc of this run where, you know, we thought we were being presented with a trope, you know, done up elegantly, right? Like before we knew the flip that was coming with Tombstone, we thought, okay, this is a trope, but it's being executed in a really like excellent fashion, right? I'm waiting for the flip. You know, like we weren't waiting for the flip. And that's what made the flip so exciting was they totally caught us off guard by having us fall back into pre-established rhythms that we thought we could expect, right? But this one just doesn't seem to be coming from the same writer that did that, right? Like, there's no part of this, like, now that maybe we're on Zeb's game, like, this guy's capable of tricking us. Like, this just doesn't seem like the same guy, like, whether he got a concussion or not. Like, this is just dumb tropes being executed poorly. And you're right, it's really boring to read because it's just, how is this going to play out? It's going to play out the way it was going to play out from page one. You know, neither of these guys are going to destroy each other. Like, it's a misunderstanding, and all the drama is evaporated out of this. Like, is it presented in a visually interesting way? I guess kind of. The art is fine. You know, it's well done, but like this character of Chasm, I couldn't be less interested in him. There's nothing tragic about him anymore, which is to say, the script seems to acknowledge that he's crazy, but also that doesn't really matter because this is what he suggests he wants anyway. So, like, they've undone all of the dramatic potential that they set up in the Beyond thing, and now it's just boring. Like, I don't know how to feel about this guy other than just not liking him on the page.
Not to cross-reference my nerd stuff and also to like go back into the well of like the early 2000s where I get all my pop culture references, that in the 90s, Dan. If this was like pro wrestling, Chasm right now would have what we refer to as X-Pac heat, which is like, he's just like, he's nothing intriguing about him. And you're kind of booing him, not because he's really like doing anything that sinister or like that means that much to you. You just want, like, at least personally, I'm just like, I just want this guy. I want this story to end so I don't have to read about this guy anymore. Like, I don't want him on the page right now. Like, there's just nothing likable about him even in an unlikable way. You know what I mean? Like Doc Ock wanting to take over the world. There was at least a kind of a sinister charm to him. Same with Norman Osborn. This is just like, oh God, like what? Like, it's like, you did this. No, I didn't. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. And it's like, what is the interest in that? And then it's like, oh, even with his new powers, it's like, what are these? Where is he getting this from? Like, and then, you know, this whole, like, I have the power and none of the responsibility, which is like the 900th time we've heard that expression in like about another Spider character. Like, I like everything here is just derivative and dull and uninteresting and unlikable. And like, I'm not rooting for Peter here. I'm rooting for Dark Web to end. It's that simple. Like, this is like really monotonous and torturous to read.
Yeah, all of the power, none of the responsibility is the line where I kind of like officially signed off. Like, there's a version of this where that is parodic, right? Like, because we've heard that so many times. Like, that was literally the tagline of the Scarlet Spider book from less than a decade ago, you know?
Right.
Like, I don't expect any new writer that comes on this book, because they're freelance guys, to have read every single thing like Nick Spencer did, and every B book, especially one that like has kind of been buried like Scarlet Spider. Although I thought that book had its own charms.
Yeah, for a while.
While also being ignored by the editor at the time. But man, I at least expect the editors who edited those books to know that has been a overused trope,
Right.
Like to the point that it's so on the nose and so tired that it's like, is this a joke? Which gets to like the tonal aspects of this comic, but man, you cannot play that line for any kind of volume anymore. And on top of that, there's this whole thematic of like, well, you're not willing to use violence against me, so I know that I can use your inactivity against you. Like, hello, that was beaten to death in the Dan Slott run.
Right.
We have to move past these themes. This book cannot survive on those themes anymore. They are buried. They are beyond buried, and just so boring to read on the page.
But what about just the whole fact with Ben, putting aside the trite and monotonous lines, just the utter frustration of this happened. No, it didn't. Well, whatever. You know what I mean? It's I feel like they're yes, it's generally you cannot reason with a supervillain, but this is taking it to another level where you just I made the joke in the synopsis about him gaslighting, but that's what it feels like. It's just
yeah.
I am just going to create this reality and do it this way anyway, not because and it's I feel like the idea in doing that is oh, Ben is so crazy, but it doesn't really come across that way. It just comes across as being dumb. You know what I mean? Well, whatever. Waka waka. I'm gonna try and kill you. I don't know. It's just it's that's what I mean by it's not even I'm rooting against him. I'm rooting for him to be gone. I don't know how you can make this character any more uninteresting than what they're doing right now, because it's there's no, it's not, I don't even know what the stakes are, because I don't care what the stakes are. I think that's part of it.
I hate to keep going back to the Big Lebowski, but it's they're nihilists, Donnie. Say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism, at least it's an ethos.
At least it's an ethos. I mean, yeah. Say what you will about Gabrielle Stacy, but at least it's an ethos, I guess.
How dare you? How dare you? But I mean, here's the thing: the book goes out of its way to do the work that's necessary. The opening page, as comical as it is, it was funny in how arch Peter was written there. And of course, I've seen that page taken wildly out of context on Twitter of people being like, look at how they're writing Peter Parker now. And it's you idiots. It's a joke.
Yes.
But if that was truly what was driving Ben, is his memory is of an arch Peter that is tearing the helmet in front of him gleefully and kicks him into the psychoreactive goo, then great. Let's go with that. Let's go with that. It's a misunderstanding, but at least I can understand it. But he throws that away and acknowledges that it's not real on the very next page. And it's well, then why did we spend the time on this? I don't understand anything about this. I don't know. I mean, there is something good, that could have been done here, right? Venom had his own thing. He was misunderstood, but you understood what drove that character. And there is a sort of evil, weird Spider-Man thing that I like here. This guy whose memories are awash. I like the idea of the spider sense being weaponized. I can kind of piece it together. The idea of psycho-reactive goo, something that reacts to your inner psyche, and the spider sense being a part of that, and it can become weaponized. Why it would form an axe or a club, I don't know, but okay, cool. Give me a cool new visual that's not it's symbiote derivative.
I would say it's very Carnage-esque, but okay. Yeah.
And I love when they're having fun with the character, when he says anything you can do, I can do weirder. Okay, cool. I'm in for that guy. It's a disturbed Peter Parker making jokes. Okay, but just be consistent about it. Otherwise, he's just the lamest guy I've ever read in this book.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like, even this whole like he's posing a threat to the city. I mean, besides like talking scooters, I don't know what the threat is either right now. You know what I mean? Like it's just like I don't know. Like I know you were making fun of earlier, like my lack of X-Men knowledge, but like maybe I'm missing something here about like what exactly is happening in the broader sense of the word of this storyline. But like, I am just not feeling any of the tension, and let's talk a little bit about the tone of this story, because I know your theory is what, that this is almost like a parody, right? This storyline right now.
I mean, I just think it's a bunch of writers having like a goofy, fun time.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to that in any way. Like, I think you could do like a fun book like that. It's just weird that it was sold to us completely the opposite. Like, just think a couple issues ago, we had Janine like breaking a guy's leg in a restaurant because he might call the cops on her. You know what I mean? Like, that couldn't be more different. Like, the scooter is a great example of this, which is like, if you really wanted us to buy into the dramatic tension of Spider-Man versus Ben Reilly or Chasm or whatever, you don't interrupt it with like a oopsie doopsie scooter asking someone to like straighten him up. It reminds me of, and I'm sure a segment of our audience is going to push back whenever I let my opinions about Star Wars out. But like, I love Revenge of the Sith, but even I can't defend decisions like when Obi-Wan and Vader are fighting in the final scene and like a silly robot suddenly comes out to interrupt the fight, and like zips around. It's cluttered and distracting. He doesn't understand the tonal weight of the scene, right? Here I'm supposed to buy into Chasm and Spider-Man, but I'm like, this talking scooter is making jokes, like, and I don't know how to feel about all of this. Like, and Mark, I don't know if you're reading the B titles at all, but like,
I'm trying to, but I'm admittedly behind right now.
I'm behind too, if only because of the holiday and everything. But like, there's a whole X-Men issue. I don't know if you read this, where one of the demons like flies into the Rockefeller tree and poops in it, and the poop animates the Rockefeller tree to come to life, and it's a demonic poop, and like, and it's like, okay, like I can't buy into this in any way, like other than as a spoof, and that issue works fine in a jokey way. But like, I think for me, the bigger thing is like the Spider-Man line being the main through line apparently of this. It's like, when did we all agree that this was just a joke story when the lead into this was anything but that?
Well, and not for nothing. I mean, you talking about it in that context, it's bringing me back to some of like the final issues of the Beyond arc, and we kind of got the same thing where it was like, this very supposed to be traumatic conclusion, and like in the build up to it, we were like in the Beyond Corp, and they were fighting like, what was it, like talking toaster ovens or something? Like, it was weird, right? Like, it was like silly and stupid and goofy stuff. And I don't know, my personal opinion when it comes to stuff like that is like, I'm fine with an issue or two like that as like a one-off. Like, not that, not to go all the way back, but not that Commuter Cometh is like goofy, but it's like, it's a deviation from the norm in terms of the storyline, and it's kind of absurd, and it's meant as like a wink and a nod to the reader, like we're taking Spidey out of his element here to do something really wacky. And it's perfect. I mean, that's like the perfect example of that kind of genre here. I mean, not only is this not that, but like, I feel like we've also now, it's been a couple of issues of this now after a setup that was supposed to be serious. So I'm just like, I don't know, like, not that Spider-Man is super serious. He's not Batman, but like, I feel like there's got to be a little more weight to it here. I mean, he is fighting his quote unquote brother. I don't know. Like, it's, if they like decided to insert an issue like this into the middle of something to kind of cut the tension, that would be one thing. But like, I just feel like they just decided to take a few months off to be like, slapstick college fart humor here. And I don't kind of see the merits of it in the context of the longer arc that they're trying to present.
Well, it's just the Deadpoolification of everything, right? Which is like, the characters don't believe in the world that they're in. Right. They treat it a goof, and the writer doesn't really believe in the world either. Right. Like, anybody writing Spider-Man, Like, it doesn't need to be like Marriage Story, you know, it doesn't need to be a drama, but like you need like, because it's going to be silly, but you need to believe in the threat of Dr. Octopus. You need to believe in the world that these characters, no matter how silly it gets, it needs to be believed in. You know, like the Raimi films, as silly as they are, like they feel like epic dramas, you know, like even if it's a scale of just Spider-Man and Green Goblin fighting in a destroyed warehouse, like that scene has real weight to it. Even though they're both wearing silly costumes, like because it's a world where the creator has invested like real emotional like care to it, you know. And then you get something like Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool, which is great as a one-off, and it's why the sequel doesn't really work all that well, is because it should be just a one-off, which is a guy who is in this world that doesn't believe in the world that he's in, you know.
Right.
And it's also why Ryan Reynolds doesn't really work in any other role other than Deadpool, because he's always doing that. And if he's undercutting the reality of the world that he's in, you, the audience, don't believe in it either, you know? So anyway, like when I read this, like it's so bizarre because like the Tombstone arc, I couldn't think of like that was so refreshing because Zeb Wells really believed in that. And here, I don't believe that Zeb Wells really believes in this world at all.
And I feel like Zeb believed in all the stuff with the Gold Goblin and
sure,
yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, it's just like it's such a departure from what we were doing here. And like I said, like if you want to do something like this to kind of cut the tension, that's one thing. But like I just don't get how you can do an entire arc of it, of which they set the arc up with like seriousness. So I don't know. It's just like whatever they're trying to accomplish here, it's just not working. And you know, I feel like the last time I was this exasperated by something not working, it was Nick Spencer. So, you know, like, congratulations, I guess. I know I'm not ready to give up on Zeb Wells here, but like this is getting mighty frustrating and disappointing. But why don't we talk about where we could talk about our feelings like that, Dan?
Yeah, sure. That will be in our Slack. Mark, like, what is our Slack?
Well, the Slack is for hundreds of listeners like you and you and you. I'm pointing at my new camera, who hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans, and they can hang out in the Slack. The Amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more. Maybe you'll want to talk about the fact that I made a really weird WWE reference to start this conversation. Anyway, what else can you do in the Slack, Dan?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to say, the Slack is like an app that lives on your phone or on your desktop of your computer. You can just jump into the conversations there and get notifications if that's something you want to do. Like, I hang out there all the time, and, you know, people will tag me and stuff, or I'll just jump into conversations I want to be a part of. Like this week, we've had a lot of discussions about Marvel Snap, the new game that everybody is playing, the card game they're playing on their phones, and we got an active community on there of people who want to play against each other. And it's, you know, at the end of the year, so it's been a time for us to kind of all look back on our favorite comics of the year, recommendations to each other. We're also recommending our favorite novels that we're reading. So, like, you know, lest it be believed that us comic book readers are somehow sophomoric in our taste. You know, you come to find out we're all reading like really interesting novels, and I've been like adding them to my Amazon wish list based on how people are describing them. So, you know, come join our sometimes intellectual and oftentimes not intellectual conversations on the Slack. But here's the deal. They're always friendly and kind and not full of the kind of toxic gatekeeping that so much of the rest of the internet is full of. So that's our Amazing Spider Slack. There should be a link in the description to this podcast or on AmazingSpiderTalk.com. It'll guide you straight there, and you can join in and jump in and say hi. We got a ton of people joining the community, and it's always thrilling. We're approaching 500 members, so that's really exciting. It's just a big growing place. Anyway, hope to see you guys in the Slack. But in the meantime, let's go back to talking about this comic. You know, I think last episode we discussed how, like, we thought Ed McGuinness's artwork was very attractive, but also like a weird pivot, you know, to kind of this more attractive, reader friendly stuff. And now that we're kind of living in this kind of sillier storyline, did it hit the same way for you here? Have you kind of settled into it and seen it for its own charms, or how'd you feel about it?
It's so weird with McGuinness because he's very technically proficient, as you've pointed out. It's like I feel like there are some pages or some panels and I'm like, yeah, this looks really good, and then somewhere I'm just like, this is not connecting in any kind of way for me. Like I don't feel like we're telling much of a story in the way this is being set up. I mean, like I did like some of the manifestations of how Chasm is presented here, and we did obviously talk about like not necessarily knowing how this power set works, but I felt like it looked cool. You know what I mean? Like in a very symbiote adjacent way, as we mentioned. But like, I don't know. Like I guess I've settled into it, but like I've settled into the fact that like there are going to be pages that I like and then pages that I don't, and I don't know what else to say about that. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like I just feel like it's very inconsistent in how it actually connects to the story. Like, does that make sense to you?
I think for me, it's like on the baseline, it's like very attractive and very competent. Like I can read the story and for the most part know what's going on very clearly, but it's kind of soulless. Like
yes.
there's not a lot of choices being made. Like when I read like a John Romita, like people might call it scratchy, but he's always like kind of going for something. Like there are interesting choices being made. And even when there aren't choices being made, like that stands out. And here there's just like a base level of like really solid comic booking. But like if you were to ask me about like Ed McGuinness, the guy, like I would say he was born to draw Spidey merch. I would buy shirts with his Spider-Man on it any day of the week. It is attractive. He should design characters for the for Spider-Man TV shows. Like I would watch a Saturday morning show in his style. And in many ways, actually, like I felt like this issue felt like an episode of a Saturday morning Spider-Man show. Yeah. It can't really be like have teeth or anything like that. It's kind of just got to be like fun entertainment. And like Ed fits that bill. So like that is all very like solid. And I think his visual storytelling is fine. Now apart from Ed, like, I do want to like criticize the editors or Ed or whoever gets this criticism. Like there's an inconsistency with the costume here that bothers the hell out of me. Like either commit to the arm bombs or don't, and right. I would say that to Zeb narratively as well, which is like use them or don't. Like, does he have bombs on his arms or not? And I have a feeling there's like a mix up in this particular issue. Allow me a diatribe here. The way that Norman Osborn suit has been utilized is somewhat like Iron Man armor, which is like it exists in a particular place and time, and Spider-Man has had to access it to utilize it in previous arcs, right? We've seen him go on dates with Felicia in his normal Spider-Man civvies, right? And I guess they civvies in this instance. And without the bombs and the backpack and all that stuff. And so the idea is that's his normal baseline suit. And when he needs to tap into the Norman stuff, he does when he's going on planned missions and things like that. Here, he's racing towards Oscorp to save Norman and yet has access to that suit. But even then, like, he doesn't utilize the bug in any way in this issue, which was, a reminder, destroyed in the previous arc. And he doesn't utilize the bombs. So, like, there seems to be, like, a sort of, like, maybe it's a coloring mix-up or something, where he's got the glowing spider on his chest, but, like, it's like a half commitment to whether or not he's in the Norman Osborn suit in this issue. So, he's got the bug on his back, but he doesn't have the bombs, but he shouldn't really have access to the... Anyway, like, an editor should have caught that, or Zeb should have caught it and provided some kind of narrative consistency around the suit. Am I making any sense, Mark?
Yeah, no, I think that makes plenty of sense. I don't know if I have anything else to add in terms of the consistency of it, but like just to rewind a little bit to you using the term soulless earlier. I mean, I think that's just what it is. I think like Ed's art here and is kind of just further amplifying my general disconnect with this story. Like if there's no emotion to it. It's this very posy action stuff. Although again, I still don't feel for an issue that was sold on a showdown, it felt very active. But maybe that's part of it. Like there's nothing dynamic about it. It just looks good in a still. Like it kind of reminds me of like Jim Lee's X-Men, where it's like, mixed with Claremont's like, orating. It kind of is like, what are they, like filibustering each other here? Like, who, I don't know. Like, yeah, in terms of like the other, like as you were kind of going on about McGuinness and like the Saturday morning cartoon stuff of it, like give McGuinness like a run of covers on this book. Cause like, as much as I love JR, I don't always love his covers. I don't know. Like I feel like he's got a place drawing Spider-Man, but I don't know if like it's on a panel to panel basis. Like it just doesn't move enough for me. Like it just feels very stilted and stiff, and it looks good. And then it doesn't look when I feel like more needs to be shown on the page. It's not, and it doesn't. It just further disconnects me from it. So that's my uneducated rant about it.
And I again, like just reiterating what I said last episode, like I think with the right story, he would be the perfect partner for it. This is not the right story for that. Like I constantly think about like Kyle Hotz's stuff he did in the Dark Web 1 issue, and right. How like twisted and dark and emotional that was. And I feel like if you brought that level to the art and paired it with Zeb's writing here, which like I think is amongst his worst in this new run, like at least it would have elevated, because that artwork would have been like gushy and emotional and leaned into the 90s extravagance of it all.
Right.
And I maybe would have like just kind of like bought into the kind of elevated nature of all of this, but it's just not connecting with McGuinness.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but the fact of the matter is I feel like every issue that McGuinness has done so far with this run, we've had the same commentary on. Like there's something just not there. Like 900 is like a big, and in retrospect, maybe I was a little harsh on 900 just because you expect more out of the Centennial, but like I think part of it was the art. Like it looked good, but like there was something missing to it. There's like there's a soullessness to it. I don't like I hate, like you don't want to say that about art, but like I don't know, like there's like an emotional level that's just not there with this art that kind of like, I don't know, at least for me as a reader, takes me out of it. So, all right.
I think the technical craft is incredible. Like when I think about 900, I think of that like that splash of all the Sinister Six and Spider-Man with Menyz's beautiful colors, and that's a cover. Like that is like one of the sexiest covers I've ever seen. But on the page, it didn't do much for me.
I think that's it. Yeah. So.
I will say though, like, about Ed, like bringing us into the final topic I want to talk about here, which is the kind of tease at the end with Limbo. Like that might be an opportunity for him to get a little bit weirder and outside of his poses. And I liked the kind of psychological stuff he was doing with Peter on the page, and that final reveal of the demons in Limbo was fun looking, with the kind of classically drawn, childish looking Peter. And like, I'm actually looking forward to the next few issues, if only because it's going to break us outside of like a more conventional thing. And I do like some of his monster designs of the like mailboxes coming to life and the scooter. So like maybe like untethering him from normalcy will allow him to have a little more fun on the page, and getting us as far away from Chasm as possible. I am looking forward to the next two issues, which have promised kind of more demonic interpretations of Spider-Man's world. And like, if we're going to have silly fun, at least give me silly fun with like really weird art and stuff. So, I'm kind of interested in like what we might see over the next two issues in a sort of like, it'll be better than focusing on what we have been doing sort of way.
Right. Okay. That's fair.
Do you want to get to reviews?
Yeah. You mean grades? Yeah, we could do grades. I'm gonna give it a D-. It's not a total failure for me, but it's teetering on the edge of it. You?
Giving it a D as well. I think we're in the same place we were the last issue, which is like, I'm not really into this storyline. It's really lost a lot of my attention and interest. So I don't know. It's just not into it. Sorry, everybody involved.
We'll be positive again in a few weeks, probably. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
maybe maybe not. I don't know.
Well, if you do find our show entertaining and valuable, despite the comics that we're talking about, we would love if you would consider supporting us. You can do so by recommending Amazing Spider Talk to a friend, and if you're able, become a member of our Patreon.
We can only bring you this content with the support of our Patreon members, and we owe the show's success to every single one of them. That's why we are constantly making exclusive content for our members.
Yeah, and I got to say, as 2022 wraps up here, like it really has been a year of reflection for me and looking back on all the things that are going well for both in my life and with the Patreon. And like this year has been a year for me of like new life. My son was born, and it's only through the Patreon that the show is really able to continue in the same manner in which it always has, which is to say I've been able to output a lot of the work that I was doing to other people. We've hired, Alex as our new video editor. We have Rick as our audio guy, and I'm able to pay them because of the Patreon, which has allowed me to spend more time with my son and still kind of retain the same, I hope, like kind of like sharp focus on the show. So, and I know the same goes for Mark, being able to kind of like keep the show in perspective, as part of his life and allowing the funds to kind of take up things that we can't handle in the same manner as before. Would you agree with that, Mark?
100%, Dan.
Awesome. Well, in that vein, like, you can become one of our Patreon members and support the show and our existence by, it's $3.99 a month. That's the price of a new comic, not even oftentimes these days. So, like, you can go check out the Patreon page. You'll see a bunch of different options. And the $3.99 one is kind of like gets you everything, like most of the stuff you're probably going to want, which is like these review episodes the week that they come out, some of our listener episodes, like all of the bonus stuff that Mark and I put together, week in and week out for our listeners.
And then if you take $10 a month, you gain access to exclusive artwork from famous Spider-Man artists commissioned exclusively for our members. This time we got a recreation of Web of Spider-Man #1's iconic cover of Black Suit Spider-Man, but joined by Daredevil as illustrated by Juan Ferreira. Plus, every episode we release a new episode-specific desktop background created for us by artist Nick Cagnetti for our patrons to enjoy. And just for people out there, I was Dan. I didn't even tell you this yet. I was recently communicating with Michael Fife about his commission that he's doing for our show. So expect more from that in the coming weeks or months, hopefully. So
yeah, and Mark, I don't know if I've told you this, but we're gearing up for season 6 of the show, and we'll be announcing some of those episodes very soon. But I've been talking with Nick Cagnetti, who's currently got his Pink Lemonade book out on the stands, which is really excellent, and I recommend you go pick it up from Oni Press. But he's already starting to work on some of the new artwork for our next season, which is another thing you can get as a member of our Patreon. Obviously you'll get to see them when the episode's released, but you'll get the high-res scans without lettering from Nick. So that's really exciting. It's been a while since we got some artwork from Nick because we've been taking a break on our show. But look, things are gearing back up again, and there's no better time to be a part of our Patreon. But, we know this is a hard time for everybody, as it is for us too. We all live busy lives, and finances are tough. So we appreciate anyone who supports the show just by listening and sharing. But if you do have the means, we would love for you to join our Patreon to support the show's continued existence. You can follow the link in the description or go to AmazingSpiderTalk.com. You'll see the big Patreon button, and you can go and browse it. Even if you're not going to sign up, just go take a look at it. Maybe it'll be something in the new year. You'll say, I'd love to support the shows that I really love and enjoy and give me entertainment throughout the year. This is a 2023 resolution. So something to consider. And also, as we always say, thank you to everybody who already supports us on the Patreon that makes everything Mark and I do possible. And here's to another great year of creating new content in 2023.
Here's to a great 10th year together, Dan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 10 years. Hard to believe.
Wow. I said I'd be done after 5, and you doubled me up, man. At this rate, you're going to get 15 out of me at least, okay?
I made you an offer you couldn't refuse.
Oh, man. Anyway, it is that time for all good things to come to an end. In this case, we mean this episode. So we want to thank you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, as always, like I was mentioning a second ago, this episode was edited by Rick Coast. Our video version is available on YouTube and was edited by Alex Galucki. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friend, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. Our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Madge, and our animated intro was created and performed by Josh Sutton. So, Mark, until I'm tempted to change our motto to everything a Spider-Man podcast can do, we do it weirder, what's our motto?
With great podcasts, there must also come the Amazing Spider Talk.
Don't miss the next installment. Spider-Man does what the spider can. Seems a web any size.